Hello, I'm Monica Phillips. I'm the Director of Learning Content and DEI at ChIPs. And it is my great pleasure to run this Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging series, which is, in my mind, the most important conversation to create thriving global workplaces. This is core to what we need in the legal industry. It's why the CLE recognizes elimination of bias, civility, competence. They're all interconnected. And I can't think of we're missing someone. John, where did you go?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I can't think of a group more incredible to bring this conversation on outstanding male allies to advance women in tech law and policy than these four incredible male allies who are here. And to lead this conversation, I'm going to turn it over to our fabulous Executive Director, Joan Toth. Welcome, Joan.
Great. Thank you so much, Monica. I am so excited to be here. This marks a real first for ChIPs. First of all, this year we introduced our DEI series. And secondly, this is the first time on a virtual stage or any stage that we have welcomed male panelists. So this is really a groundbreaking day for us, and we are thrilled to have this esteemed panel here. I've really enjoyed chatting with these gentlemen and getting to know them, and they are fabulous representatives for their organizations and for male allies overall. And as far as the participants in the audience goes, we know that there are a lot of women in this audience. And so what we hope that you get from this is that you will be able to take things, nuggets back to your potential male allies. And even if they don't know they're doing it, you can help them become better male allies to you and to your organizations. And for the brave guys that we've got here, thank you for attending. We are thrilled to have all of you. So I am just going to start and ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, what they do at their organization, and a little bit about their organization. So I'll actually start with an organization that really needs no introduction, and that is the Coca-Cola Company. And we've got Willie Hernandez representing Coke.
Well, thank you, Joan. And just thank you for including me in this conversation. I didn't realize this is the first time we've had male panelists in front of the organization. So now I'm particularly honored. So thank you. As you said, I'm with the Coca-Cola Company. I am the International General Counsel. That means I'm responsible for all the legal work that happens outside of the United States. Although I do live in the United States, I'm in Atlanta. The organization, so I have about 175 lawyers around the world. Only 2 are in Atlanta. They cover all the continents. So a very, very diverse team, to say the least. Prior to Coke, I was with technology companies, most recently Facebook. Prior to that, HP. Prior to that, Amazon. And I started my tech career with IBM many years ago. And I guess the last thing I would say about Coca-Cola is we are a company that is very committed to DE&I. We have a pretty simple mission: refresh the world and make a difference. And that includes in every community that we serve around the world. And promoting equity is a big, big part of our mission.
Great, thank you. And I'll move on to another very well-known name within the IP space. And Bismarck, tell us about you and about the USPTO.
Well, hello. In addition to it being a great honor to be in this first group, it's also making me a little bit nervous, right, to be in the first group. My name is Bismarck, and I'm the director of a small office that is part of the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And that office is called the Office of EEO and Diversity. A large part of our office handles concerns brought to us by employees, but an equally important function of our office is to ensure equality in employment opportunities. And so looking at issues like advancement of women in our workforce is something that we have made part of our core our core mission at USPTO.
Great. And I definitely want you to chat more about that and why DEI is part of that core mission. And I'll move over to John Dorf. John.
Great. Joan, thank you. And it's an honor to be part of this panel, particularly in light of the fact that it is the first all male panel. And it is an honor to be involved with and have gotten to know the organization. I am the managing partner at Dorf, Nelson, and now Zauderer. We've added a new name. I started my practice as a sole practitioner some 30 plus years ago. Today, we are headquartered in Westchester County, New York, with offices in Los Angeles, California, New York City, and New Jersey. And my primary responsibilities are managing the firm on a day-to-day basis. And then substantively, I spend a lot of time in the real estate space and corporate space.
And last but not least, a gentleman who has brought several audiences, John Damaris. You have brought your teams from San Francisco and Washington, D.C. and New York along for the ride with us today. We're thrilled that they're all here. And tell us about you and your firm.
So hi, everybody. I'm happy to be included in this too. Thank you for inviting me. I run a patent litigation firm, intellectual property litigation firm. We're about 90 lawyers, probably a little more than that right now. And as you pointed out, Joan, we have offices in New York and San Francisco and DC. New York's by far the biggest office. We started 13 years ago. A small group of us broke off from Kirkland & Ellis, where I spent most of my professional career up until this current firm, where I was running the intellectual property group firm-wide for Kirkland & Ellis. And 13 years ago, we decided we could do it better by ourselves if we broke off and specialized. And so we are now 90 lawyers. We only do IP. We do things around intellectual property. You know, if there's a contract action or an antitrust action or something, if it's technology-based, we'll do that too. But really the bread and butter is patent litigation. And we do all types, life sciences and tech, plaintiffs and defendants. And we have a good collection of killer women in our midst, and I try hard to retain them. So I'm happy to be part of this, and hopefully we'll continue to retain them.
Great. Thank you. And I want to just remind our audience, we really want to hear from you. We want to take questions. So please, if you have a question, please put it in the chat, and we would love to be able to have that discussion. And so just to kick our panel off, I thought about what is a male ally? You know, is there a definition to it? But I want to hear about what that means to you personally. And Bismarck, why don't you start us off?
Well, I think being an ally is just so important to the work that I do at USPTO. And as I mentioned, that work is focused on ensuring equal employment opportunity. And what we see at our organization is that we see many women in our workforce. And as we go up kind of to our executive ranks, we see that there are fewer women in the executive ranks. And what we learned by looking at this issue is that two things. First, people don't know how to advance themselves in a way that is appropriate for the culture of the organization. And then the second thing is that there is a gap in terms of encouragement. We know that that people are more likely to pursue career advancing opportunities if they are encouraged to do so. And so at the USPTO, we are being more intentional about making sure that high performing job seekers aspiring executives know exactly how to advance their careers, and that they've received the encouragement that is so important in terms of getting women to put their hats in the ring so that we see greater diversity in their the senior leadership positions. Now, in saying that, we all know that the fact is that now we're seeing more women attending college. Women are more likely to be valedictorians of their high school classes. But when it comes to the tech industry, when it comes to STEM careers, there's some barrier that is preventing us from seeing a representative group of women in those positions, even if you forget about kind of those higher positions as executives. So I think that being an ally is so important. It's so important because you don't have the best people at the top making the decisions that are meaningful for your organization unless you look throughout your whole organization and you create equality of opportunity so that everyone has a chance to compete on their merits and show what they can contribute to the organization. And that's really where allyship, to me, comes into play and why it's so important.
Great. And I want to get back, we want to revisit that conversation on both career pathways and getting more women into STEM. I really want to hone in on those because I think those are super, super important. And speaking of career pathways, we have two of the what could be termed sort of the mid-size law firms represented here with John and John. And so we'd love to know more about what that looks like, because there may not be gigantic numbers of opportunities within your organization. So think about that, and I'd love to frame that up later in the discussion. Willie, what does being a male ally look like to you?
Yeah, I think it's an important question to dissect a little bit because it helps you go out and you find your allies. I think what people do really well at companies and firms is they bring in lawyers, male or female, and they coach them on how to be better lawyers, how to do the work, how to serve clients. And that's all very important. But I think an ally takes a more personal interest in the individual's career. And that leads to different conversations and different coaching. How do you build relationships over time that will help you succeed? How do you get the visibility that you're going to need to get the right assignments and the right elevation in your career? And that's a much different conversation than managing the work itself or coaching the lawyer. It's a much more personal conversation about how to succeed. And that's where I think people become allies, when they take a personal interest in somebody else's career and then help them do the things that they need to do to navigate their career towards more progress and elevation.
Great, thank you. John Dorf.
Well, I'm going to just pick off two comments that were made. Bismarck citing equality of opportunity, and Willie really taking the long view, the career. The taking an interest in the individual, and I guess my interest in equality of opportunity, gender equality, probably goes back. I'm one of three boys, and my mother was a very strong-willed woman, and thankfully and gracefully instilled in me the importance of equal opportunity. And so as I came through the ranks, it became very much a part of my DNA. I think of when I was a little boy playing tennis with my mother, one of my earliest memories. I must have been 5 years old or so, and we're hitting the ball back and forth, and the instructor's on the court next door. And the instructor said to the little girl that was taking a lesson, stop hitting the ball like a little girl, hit the ball like a boy. And I saw my mother just, I was waiting for a sonic boom. But she held her composure, and as we switched the sides of the court, she had a little conversation with the instructor. Needless to say, that comment was never made again. So it's resonated with me from a very, very, very early age. And I think it is all about what has already been said. I would just add that being there, being present, listening, really giving to others that opportunity. And the way you do that is by being present, by listening, by being accessible, and by creating a culture and an environment that is nurturing, so that women who are ascending up have the same opportunities that men have. And I think it's really, really important to be consistent, to be determined, to provide to women the opportunities that they deserve.
Great, thank you. I love that story. I think we've all seen situations like that and sort of step back and react to that.
Mm,
I'm glad your mom did that.
so am I.
John Damaris.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a lot to add. I think I agree with the comments that everyone said, so I won't belabor it, but I'll just sort of capsulate it this way. I think opportunities is the key in our business, and what I do as an outside law firm where we're litigators. My job is to make sure that the women associates and partners in my firm are getting the same opportunities as the men, same opportunities with me to work directly with me, the same opportunities to work with the clients, to work with our adversaries, and to say things in court. And I spend a lot of time on that aspect and trying to make sure that the opportunities are there for the talented women. But then going back to Bismarck's comment about the number of candidates too. So I also spend a lot of time on retention, because as the women get more senior in our business, it can be a difficult life. And I like to visit with them and encourage them and let them know that they're doing well, let them know that they're going to be successful if they stay. And I try to sort of encourage them to stay. And then we try to do things around the firm to make it palatable to stay. You know, what kind of programs do we have? What kind of facilities do we have? And we spend a lot of time thinking about how we can make it palatable to stay, flex time and part-time, and making sure you have the right facilities and the right support system. So we're working on that. But then even then, when we do have not an insignificant number of women who do choose to move on because it is a tough life and to be a litigator, and in that circumstance, you've got to swallow your own interests and help them with the next step. So we often, even though we don't want to lose them, we place some of our fine women at clients or in clerkships, and it's painful after we've trained them and want them to stay to see them go. But I think part of being an ally is to, help them even in the transition. And it's a bummer it happens, but we try to help them on the way of the transition as well.
John, I want to pick up on that because when we spoke earlier, you used a phrase that I really liked called proactive retention and versus reactive retention. Not just, gee, I didn't know she was unhappy and so she left. And you also spoke about how you engage and work with young lawyers. Can you talk about that? Because I think that's super important that that you're really not just talking to your direct reports about their issues, but it goes throughout the organization. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I learned that the hard way in our early years. We had some great women, and when they got to be sort of mid-level associates, they started leaving, and I lost, I think, 2 or 3 really great ones. And I was stunned because they were doing great. They were really good workers, super talented. And so I started after that spending extra effort in advance of that happening. So when I had a young, talented woman coming up who I thought could really do this job and was super talented and was going to be successful here, I would from time to time just go visit with them and say, you're on the right track. You're doing great. You're going to be a partner here if you just keep doing what you've been doing. Everyone thinks you're fantastic. This is a good career for you. And by having that conversation in advance before they decide they don't want to do the job any longer, I found that it's been pretty successful keeping people around, and they stay and they wait until they're up for partner. And I think one of the reasons we lose people, and for some reason people don't feel comfortable that they're going to make it, or it's a tough grind and they think the prospects are unachievable, or the mountains are too high to climb. So if you get in there when they're having those thoughts, even before they're expressing those thoughts, and say, no, you're doing great, you're on the path, you're gonna be successful here, just please stick around. And I've actually gone as far as to, for certain people who were really super, I would say, you are going to make partner here, stay, don't leave. And they stay, and it's been wonderful, really fun. But you have to then give them the opportunities. So I think what you're referring to is one of the most fun things I've done recently. One of the most fun things I've done in my career, I've done recently. That's what I mean to say, which is I had a particular woman, and I won't use her name, she knows who she is, who was really fantastic, knocking the cover off the ball. And she was an associate, and I saw her we put her up to do a mock at one of our client mocks, and she did a really great job. So after that, I had the opportunity to do a series of cases. So I went to see her and I said, I want you to run these cases for me, and you'll work directly with me. We won't have any other partners on it. She was an associate. And I said, we'll put together a team of all associates, and it'll be just me and all the associates. And we put a bunch of female associates and male associates, but I think we had 4 female associates on the case. And I ran the case for the first time with all associates. 4 of them were female, and the whole team was being run by a female. And we went to trial. And it's the first time I'd ever been to trial where I was the only one on the team who had any trial experience. And we won $272 million and $100 million enhancement for willfulness. So it was a fantastic, and of course she made partner now. She's one of my partners now. But there are 3 other fantastic women well, it's probably more than that, but the 3 I'm referring to who tried that last case with me. And we got another trial coming up in January. So it was really fun. And it goes to what John and Bismarck were saying, and I think Willie mentioned it too. If you find talented women, you have to give them the opportunity, and they will show you that, in fact, they are talented, and that will make them like the job a lot more. And it's actually a super fun job if you actually get to do the good work. And the only way to break out in this business, and in my business, in the law firm business, is to do the work, to get in court, to negotiate with the other side, to argue in front of the judge. You're never going to get clients on your own if you don't do that, because if you don't do that, when you try to get a client, they're going to ask, have you ever done this? And when you say no, they're never going to hire you. So we have to get the young women these opportunities so that they can become, stand-up lawyers on their own right. And so this is the most fun thing I've ever done, and I'm going to keep doing it.
Well, that's great. It sounds like you really try to nurture that culture. And I want to talk about this because each one of you mentioned culture. And so talk to us about the importance of fostering that culture. And how do you know? I mean, you're all in a position where you're creating the culture, if not for the firm, then at least for your own particular part of a firm. And so what what gets in the way of that culture, and where is it that the schism hits, that women are not necessarily feeling like there's a place for them or that they're advancing? Anybody want to comment on that?
I'm happy to jump in. I think the cultures that exist today have been built up over a long period of time based on a lot of different systems and practices that have developed over time. And those lead to inequities. And so I think it's important, if we want to change the culture to drive towards more equity, we have to look at the system and identify the parts of the system that are causing the inequity, because then you can start to change some of the system. Simple things. Here at Coke, when a job opened up, the person was handpicked for the replacement, and that was just a common practice. At some point, somebody had to raise their hand and say, wait a minute, that is depriving so many people the opportunity to advance because they're not even given a chance. And so now every role that opens up must be posted, and it must be slated with multiple candidates and diverse candidates. And everybody is given a shot, at least at being reviewed. That's just one example, I think, of looking at the system and identifying where it's going wrong, changing it. And over time, the culture changes. Now, people would not want to fill a role without opening it up and hearing from people, including the people that maybe they have no visibility to or limited visibility to. And it's something that we now have built into our culture, but somebody had to make that intentional move to look at the systemic problems that are standing in the way and adjust that, and then let the people develop a more positive culture over time once you implement those practices.
Anyone else have comments on that? And my interest in this question too is, where do we see the bias? What's getting in the way of allowing the thriving?
So Bismarck here, one of the things I think to acknowledge, and I'm not going to directly respond to your question, is that the guys in the room sometimes don't know where the bias is, right? We start our meetings talking about what happened in the football game the night before. And if you're someone who doesn't watch football, is not a fan, then you are left out of that conversation. But to the people who are active participants in that conversation, they have no idea that they are unintentionally excluding other people from having that kind of building that kind of rapport that might be important when we start talking about career advancement and building relationships that are important for career advancement. So I think it's really important, as part of being an ally, to ask women how they feel excluded. Ask women that you're close to, hey, are there ways that we are excluding you, or what would make you feel more included? When you're around other women who work in our organization, what do you talk about as areas of improvement for us? I think that's so important.
So apologies, everyone. I lost internet for a couple of minutes. So but my apologies. It was no fun. So thank you, Monica, for stepping in, and thank you, Willie and Bismarck, for your comments there. And I think that what perhaps Monica was asking was about various biases. Was that the question, Monica? And I came in while Bismarck was speaking. Does anybody else want to comment on that? Because I think that's really interesting.
Well, I would just all the comments are so on point. I would just add, and this was not premeditated. I'm going to mention my mother again. I don't know. She's probably she has passed, but she's probably looking down, coaxing me. But you know, I'm thinking my mother could have just, when we were playing tennis, closed her ears and done nothing. She took action. And so I think that male allies have to take action. And I think as we age, we can't get comfortable, because comfort leads oftentimes to inactivity. And so I think we need to be proactive. We can't get comfortable. We need to pass our method of thinking and our views and our DNA down to the next generation, so the institution can carry on what it is that we believe in. So I think that for women lawyers, you know, it's interesting. The stats are that there may even be more women in law school today. In fact, I think it may be than men. But you know, if you look in the boardrooms and the most senior levels of law firms, those statistics don't accurately connect to or relate to the statistics in law school. So I would just say that let us not get comfortable. Let us continue to push the mission forward to give women the opportunities that they so deserve.
I think
And how
I
do
think
you-
there's another thing going on here too, though, at least in the law firm context. You know, in the norm, especially in what I do, which is the technical intellectual property cases, in the senior ranks, there's more men than women just historically. And so a man has to decide to get out of the way and make an opportunity for the women, and the women are younger and less experienced. So in this example I just gave you, I had to push my male partners aside. I mean, figuratively, I didn't really have to do that, but and say, no, I'm going to let these younger women run this case. And so that's one thing that's going on. There's a disparate amount of older men who are, need to get out of the way to create the opportunity. But then also there's an interesting dynamic in the law firm setting, and it's probably the same in corporations, although I never worked in a corporation, where men more often will come into your office and say, "Give me that opportunity," and not so many women come into my office and say, "Give me that opportunity." It just happens to be that way. I don't know why it's that way. So that's why I said early on, I find myself taking the responsibility of making sure the women are getting the equal opportunities and getting the right roles, and looking down the list of like who's getting what role here. But I think there's some of that too, and I don't know if that's bias or it's just the way that biologically people are comfortable. Maybe men are more comfortable demanding their role than younger women are, and maybe we should do something about that.
Well, John, you bring up a really interesting point, because I'm sitting here saying to myself, okay, so you're asking men to sort of step aside and make room, encouraging them to make the pie bigger rather than telling them they're not getting a smaller slice of the pie, etc. And how do you nurture, or demand, I should say, accountability from them? What are you doing that helps them realize that it's not a zero-sum game?
Yeah, well, we have at our shop, we have a very collaborative culture, and I don't need to do a lot of convincing, because I was using that expression of pushing the men aside, but I didn't actually have to do that because my partners are in, we're all of like mind on what we're trying to achieve here. But I do think in some organizations it can be a serious problem, and it is very hard in the legal world, in the law firm world, to do that, because many firms compensate the lawyers based on what they're doing individually. And so to get a
Yeah.
senior man who is in charge of the client relationship and running the cases to share that relationship with a younger woman, that man's going to think, okay, my comp is going to take a hit if I make space for this person. And that's a culture that is, hard to get out of. We don't compensate that way at my firm, so we don't have that. It was one of the reasons why I left the big firm I was in and created a different way of doing it. We don't bill by the hour, and we don't compensate based on origination and client relationships. So we don't have that mojo going on with the senior men. But it is a problem. It's a systemic problem in the way that law firms are constructed, I think.
I want to get into pipeline, which you had mentioned, but first I want to ask John Dorf, when you and I talked before, you stressed that this conversation is top of mind, continuous, and that you are focused on the accountability within your organization. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, it's ongoing for sure, as I have shared in my experiences, and it is continuous. And accountability really is about speaking up. When you see something that you feel as a leader in your organization is not proper, you have to speak up. Whether it's on the tennis court, in the courtroom, in the conference room, in the boardroom, in the hallway, by the water cooler, or in the yard, you have to speak up. You have to have the inner core and the inner strength to speak your mind. I think you also want to create an environment when you are in a leadership position where women and men, where everyone in the organization feels comfortable coming to you. So accessibility, I think, is the word that I think is a really important part of the overall formula for success.
I think that you're right, and accessibility, listening, all of what we may sort of have always termed the softer skills, super important in in retention and ensuring that culture is welcoming. And I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about pipeline. And Bismarck, you talked a bit about the pipeline and attracting women into STEM. And when we spoke, you also talked about a very intentional way for you to build confidence among what you termed the non-traditional candidates. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have put on many efforts to try to encourage interest and preparation for non-traditional candidates to be interested in career advancement opportunities, and then to get them prepared for those opportunities. And what we find is I've called it kind of an encouragement gap. And what we know is that people who apply for these career advancement opportunities tend to have been encouraged to apply for those opportunities. And so my approach anytime that I see, non-traditional candidates who are curious about growing their careers, and if the folks are capable and ambitious, then what I do is I over encourage. You know, I remember saying to someone who was aspiring for promotion, "Hey, listen, this job is yours if you want it. This job has your name on it." I tell them, "Hey, look, you're the best candidate go get it. You know, even if you're not selected for this particular position, by applying, by throwing your hat in the ring, you're signaling that you want to be available for these kinds of positions in the future. And in fact, special projects may come your way just because you applied. And what I found is that these non-traditional candidates need what I call over encouragement. You've really got to tell them that they're the cat's meow, that they, you know, that they have what it takes to be in a position that they are seeking. And I found great success in terms of encouraging people, inspiring them to move forward. Um, and I noticed that with non-traditional candidates, that that encouragement piece is just terribly important.
And Bismarck, I know the USPTO has a lot of focus on reaching back further into the pipeline, not just with internal candidates and with recruiting, but back into universities, back into even back into the educational system. Can you talk about that for a second?
Sure. So no American should be proud that at the USPTO we're about 1/3, a little bit more than 1/3 female. But when you look at this, we're a reflection of who is graduating from engineering schools, and in particular, who's graduating from schools who offer programs focused in computer engineering, computer science, and electrical engineering. And we just don't see the women there and to feed our pipeline. And so I think that the USPTO has been very progressive. And what we've done a couple of years ago, several years ago now, is to set up an Office of Education. And the goal of this Office of Education is to focus on the K through 12 community and to provide programming, not just for them, but also for their teachers, to get a whole diverse group of folks interested in, number one, pursuing a career in STEM, and then number two, helping folks stay in, and sharing with them some of the career opportunities that they would qualify for after they achieve their education, after they get their degree. Most recently, we've dramatically expanded our internship program so that we're bringing folks in and we're paying for more of our internships, because we know that non-traditional candidates sometimes can't just participate in these programs during the summer when they had originally planned to earn money so that they could pay for the rest of their education. So all of those things we do, acknowledging that we need to build pipelines way upstream if we hope to see greater diversity in our ranks in the future.
And
I'm just
speaking,
going to jump in here. I apologize, Joan, for those who are listening. The MCLE code is male allies 23, all one word lowercase, and it's in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. And Bismarck, I'm gonna call on you even further, because Leta Seti, who is in our audience, has a fantastic post in the chat. She is the founding investor of How Women Invest Funds, and she mentioned that 2% of VC dollars that is invested in female-led companies, and 0.5% in women founders. And so, Bismarck, I know, because I've participated in it, you are doing a lot to focus on women entrepreneurs at USPTO. So you're really reaching back into, several different pipelines with that, which is fantastic. Any comments about that?
Well, I can tell you that Kathy Vidal has been very clear about her expectations for her immediate team, and I'm part of that team. And so all of us have been all hands on deck it's so interesting. Years ago, I remember all of the diversity programs would come through my office, and I would be intimately familiar with everything that's going on. But now we see Kathy herself taking on new initiatives, appearing before groups of women entrepreneurs, providing them with coaching and mentoring, even at those very places. And then we have a very interested deputy director. He's headed out to Atlanta, Willie, near you, to attend a forum at something called Afrotech, which is, I think, maybe one of the largest technology conferences targeting African American technologists in the country. And we have, a women's entrepreneurship symposium that's run out of our Office of Communication. Our team that's working internationally is focused on bringing together all of the big patent offices and IP offices around the world to focus on expanding opportunities for women. And so I'll tell you, I would certainly take the credit for this, but I've got to tell you, it's Kathy's insistence that we focus on these areas, and also the fact that she has asked all of the kind of substantive areas outside of the diversity area also to focus on these areas. And I think that we are that those initiatives have been very well received.
So DEI is not just a silo. It's embedded in the organization.
Right. It's not just a silo. Kathy expects everyone, all of us who report to her. So we're talking about the CFO, the chief administrative officer, the general counsel, the chief communications officer, even the chief information officer. All of us are pursuing diversity initiatives unique to our own kind of portfolios. And that is definitely, at Kathy's personal direction.
And I want to talk about, from a corporate standpoint. Willie, you mentioned that you sit on the Equity Accountability Committee at Coca-Cola. Tell us about that, because that's pretty interesting to have that word accountability in an organizational task force, if you will. So tell us about that organization and how it works and what impact does it make?
Yeah, a couple years ago, the company, I think, had an important conversation among themselves, and they realized that if the problems are systemic and our company is part of the system, then we're part of the problem. And there was specific investments made to bring in the right experts and stakeholders to drill down on identifying where is our system potentially broken or leading to the wrong outcomes. And so we brought in 3 different councils, an African American, Asian American, and a Hispanic council. And to drive accountability, these are sponsored by Coke employees, but the councils are made up of external experts who will hold us accountable. And the goal was to identify very specific problems within our system and tailor solutions. So one example, and we just met with the full council yesterday to announce that much of our workforce in the bottling system is going from manual labor to more modernized digital labor. That is going to impact underrepresented communities more than others. And so we are identifying very specific jobs that are going to be impacted by this. We are building relationships with education institutions, from high schools to trade schools to colleges, to teach the specific skills that our bottling system are going to need into the future, and then advertising it and getting the population that we want to reach into those programs, because we are committed to having our workforce reflect the communities that we serve. But it's very, very intentional. And by setting up the system of accountability and bringing people in who have vested interests in seeing the right outcomes, this is not a PR stunt, and we can't hide behind good marketing here. The results are going to speak for themselves, and that's how we're going to hold ourselves accountable. And specific to gender, we have a very specific goal to achieve 50% gender equity across all levels of the company by 2030. And that causes every leader to be intentional about how they approach filling every single role. So, I mean, I'm very, very proud that our leader in Africa is a woman from Latin America. Our leader in ASEAN and South Pacific is also a woman from Latin America. But the system is set up to force the right conversations and behaviors when making these key decisions. Nobody's put in these roles because they're women, but the system was set up to force deeper conversations and then hold the leaders accountable to justify their decisions. And that has led to broadening the pipeline, getting more people in and advancing them.
Unmute. I wanted to ask about the role of what we used to call BRGs, business resource groups, employee resource groups. But I think that there's a bigger issue right now that I would love all of you to weigh in on. And every day I pick up my digital newspaper and I read about fewer ESG programs, fewer DEI programs. Talk to me and talk to our audience, if you would, about your thoughts on that, on the recent Supreme Court ruling, which made all of us in the DEI business really sit up and take notice. Any thoughts on that? Any comments? How do you think that is going to impact your, when it gets to grassroots? What are you doing about DEI? Is there going to be any impact? John,
Yeah.
David,
I don't think in the law firm business that the recent Supreme Court case is going to really make any impact. I know some law firms have been sued recently for their scholarship programs, but I think those are easy to tailor around the language and still achieve the same result, because the Supreme Court left some language in the opinion that you could consider an applicant's adverse circumstances. So I think if those law firms just get smart on how they phrase what their scholarship is geared towards, I think they can achieve essentially the same goal. And in the law firm setting, the interviewing is done live and you're meeting all the candidates. And if your organization has a goal to, as Willie said, have a population that reflects society, it's very easy to achieve that goal, regardless of what the Supreme Court has said in its opinion. So I don't see that changing in law firms, and I think most of the the big law firms these days are set on this, especially in the kind of work that we do, where we do jury trials, and you need the trial team to reflect the jury pool and to reflect society. So I think if you have the old style of trial team versus one that reflects what society is really like, you're going to be at a disadvantage going forward. And I think people in the law firm world really understand that. So I don't think the Supreme Court change is going to make a big difference in law firm life.
Yeah, and I'll speak from the corporate perspective. I mean, certainly there's a lot of pressure out there, a lot of interest groups writing letters and pounding the table to get companies to shape their programs the way they want them shaped. I think from our perspective, and I think many companies taking a very quick step back and realizing that we still need to stick to our values and pursue our business strategy. And our values promote equity. And our business strategy will be stronger when our community, when our work population reflects our communities. And that is a valid business objective for us. So our DE&I efforts don't change. The goals are still the same. You know, we'll look at them. You know, the law says you can't discriminate against anybody. We'll make sure that they don't, but we're not pulling back.
Any other comments on that, John, Dorf, Bismarck?
I would just say, and I think this is emblematic of what has already been said. I mean, and I've said it to my team, you know, diversity and gender equality is the perfect example of doing good and doing well. I think, as John said, you know, if you're arguing a case before a jury and that jury is diverse, you're going to want your counsel to be diverse. If you're negotiating a contract and your client comes from a diverse background, you're going to want a diverse team. I think that the beauty of diversity and gender equality lies in the power of the product. And at the end of the day, the power of the product is small I, small p, intellectual property. It's the intangible delivery of intellectual services and to a wide variety of audiences. So I think that it's in everyone's self-interest too, from a business perspective, to be diverse. It's a winning formula. And for firms and organizations that look the other way, I would just add that's just a very poor business decision. So diversity, gender equality is a win-win on so many different fronts.
I like to say law firms and corporations aren't stupid, right?
That's right.
So we're nearing the top of the hour, but Bismarck, when we spoke earlier, and I want this to sort of wrap everything up, you were very passionate about talking about your legacy and how you really focus on this kind of work as the most rewarding part of your career. Tell us more about that, so that we can we can really close out with a great feeling about this work that we're all doing.
No pressure, right? Look, I've been delighted to be part of this really impressive panel and to join this great group of people who are interested in allyship. I'm super interested in it just because what I found is that there's not really that much career growth for me. I am at a point in my career where I've reached kind of the pinnacle of where I wanted to be in terms of being a civil rights attorney in an executive branch agency of the government. And so when I'm looking around for opportunities to be inspired, one of the things or the thing that has the greatest impact on me personally is knowing that I've influenced and shaped the direction of the organization by placing people or helping to mentor people into positions where they could continue doing good work into the future. And so it's kind of a way to remain immortal, right? Or to be immortal, which is to put people who benefited from that kind of allyship into positions so that they could carry on the tradition of being a great ally, especially being an ally to people who aren't necessarily like them. And I find that to be the single most rewarding part of what I have an opportunity to do at USPTO.
Wonderful. Well, I really want to thank all of you. I want to give a big round of virtual applause to these four gentlemen. Thank you so much for all you are doing within our industry. And thank you all for being wonderful role models and male allies. And we thank you for being here today. So much appreciated. And please, to our audience, please join us for another DEI session. This is it for the year, but we're going to start up next year again with a similar series. So thank you.
And Joan, tomorrow we have the LinkedIn session for CHIPS members.
Yes, for everybody, we have LinkedIn, how to enhance your profile. I know I haven't updated mine in a while, probably needs a little dusting off. So we'd love to see you join us there for that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
Thank
all
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Really appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone. And if you have MCLE questions, you can reach out to me.
Great job, Joan.
Thank you. Thank you. I
I'm just
appreciate
gonna disconnect the board so I can just talk to you for 1 second.
Okay.
Removing them. Hold on 1 sec. Who do you don't report? I don't want to report them. I know I've hit that button once before accidentally. I think it may have been with you. So let me get on video. Are we recording still? Stop recording.